the silent guardian of the frozen kingdom. Hello, and welcome to Pillow Loom. Tonight, I have a story for you about a place where winter never ends, where snow falls in eternal silence, and where someone watches over the sleeping world with quiet devotion. This is a gentle journey, a peaceful one, and I hope it carries you softly into the deepest, most restful sleep. Let yourself drift as we walk together through this frozen kingdom. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just listen, breathe, and let go. There exists, in a place beyond the edges of ordinary maps, a kingdom that knows only winter. Not the fleeting winter of a few cold months, but a perpetual, gentle winter that stretches across time itself like a whisper that never quite fades. Here, snow falls in patterns so intricate they seem painted by invisible hands. Each flake descending through air so still you could hear your own heartbeat echoing against the silence. The kingdom rests in a valley cradled by mountains whose peaks disappear into clouds that glow faintly even at night. These are not harsh, forbidding mountains, but ancient guardians themselves, worn smooth by countless centuries of patient snowfall. Their slopes curve like the shoulders of sleeping giants, and when the wind moves across them, it carries not a howl but a lullaby, a sound so low and constant it becomes part of the very foundation of sleep. Within this valley, the kingdom spreads in careful patterns. Stone towers rise at intervals along the perimeter, each one built from pale gray rock that seems to absorb and reflect moonlight in equal measure. The towers are neither tall nor imposing, but they possess a quality of steadfastness that speaks of something beyond mere architecture. They were built long ago by hands now forgotten, in a time when the first snows fell and someone decided that this place, this perfect pocket of winter calm, deserved to endure. The kingdom's heart consists of a modest town, its buildings huddled close as if sharing warmth through proximity alone. Rooftops sag gently beneath the accumulated weight of snow that never melts, but instead compresses into something between ice and memory. Chimneys release thin ribbons of smoke that rise straight up into the windless air before dissipating into nothing, as if the cold itself swallows the evidence of fire. Through windows, candlelight flickers in shades of amber and gold, small squares of warmth that punctuate the blue-white darkness like fireflies caught in crystal. The streets are narrow, winding between buildings in patterns that seem almost organic, as though the town grew from the ground rather than being built upon it. Cobblestones peek through packed snow in places where feet have worn smooth pathways, and in the morning, these stones hold a thin sheen of frost that catches light like scattered diamonds. But now, in the depth of night, they lie hidden, marked only by the faint depressions of old footprints that snow slowly fills, erasing the day's passage with gentle, methodical patience. Beyond the town, forests of evergreens stand in silent congregation. Their branches bow beneath the weight of snow, creating natural archways and tunnels where the darkness gathers most completely. Within these woods, the silence deepens to something almost tangible, a presence rather than an absence. Here, the occasional crack of a branch under too much weight sounds like a gunshot, startling, and then immediately absorbed back into the stillness. And here, between these ancient trees, small clearings open up where the snow lies perfectly undisturbed, as smooth as sheets on an unslept-in bed. To the north, a lake stretches its frozen surface toward the horizon. The ice is thick enough to support carriages, clear enough to see shadowy shapes of rocks and submerged logs far below. During the day, this clarity creates the illusion of walking on glass suspended over an underwater world. But at night, the ice becomes something else entirely. It transforms into a mirror for the sky, reflecting stars so perfectly that standing at its center feels like floating in space, surrounded on all sides by pinpricks of distant light. The ice itself tells stories through its surface. Patterns spread across it like lace, intricate formations of frost that bloom in fractal spirals and geometric precision. Bubbles, frozen mid-rise, create constellations within the ice, trapped pockets of air that caught and held when the water first surrendered to cold. In places, the ice has cracked and refrozen, creating pressure ridges that rise a few inches above the surface. Long lines that run for hundreds of feet before disappearing into darkness. These ridges catch the faint starlight and glow with a blue luminescence that seems to come from within the ice itself. Above all of this, the night sky performs its ancient dance. The aurora moves across the darkness in waves of green and violet, flowing like water made of light. The colors shift and pulse, never quite settling into stillness, never quite breaking into chaos. Sometimes the aurora hangs in vertical curtains that stretch from horizon to horizon, and sometimes it spirals into knots and vortices that appear to spin without actually rotating. The light is bright enough to cast shadows, faint gray echoes of objects on the snow, but not so bright as to dispel the essential character of night. The people of the kingdom have long since surrendered to sleep. In houses throughout the town, fires have been banked to coals that glow red in the darkness of hearths. Children dream beneath heavy quilts, their breath forming small clouds in rooms where temperature has dropped just enough to encourage deeper slumber. Adults lie still in their beds, some alone and some in pairs, their sleeping forms barely distinguishable beneath mounds of blankets and furs. Even the animals have settled. Dogs curled nose to tail in corners, cats sprawled before dying embers, horses standing in stables with heads lowered and eyes half closed in that peculiar dozing state that allows them to rest while remaining almost aware. The kingdom sleeps. And this is when he walks. No one is quite certain who he is or where he came from. Some claim he has always been here, as much a part of the landscape as the mountains themselves. Others insist he arrived generations ago, during some long-forgotten crisis, and simply never left. A few believe he is not a person at all, but something else, a manifestation of winter itself, or the embodiment of protection given form through collective need and belief. What is certain is this: he is real, and he walks every night when the kingdom sleeps. His appearance offers few distinguishing features. He wears a cloak that might once have been dark blue but has faded to a color somewhere between gray and the shadow cast by moonlight on snow. Beneath this, simple armor covers his chest and shoulders, old leather reinforced with plates of metal that no longer shine but have instead developed a patina that makes them nearly invisible against winter's palette. His boots are worn but serviceable, wrapped in additional cloth against the cold, and they make no sound as they press into snow. His face remains mostly hidden beneath a hood, but on the rare occasions when firelight or aurora glow reveals it, observers note only a quality of weathered calm. There is nothing frightening about his features, nothing that speaks of threat or malice. Instead, there is simply presence, the look of someone who has walked these paths so many times that he and the paths have become almost the same thing. Most remarkable is this: he leaves no footprints. Where he walks, the snow remains undisturbed, as smooth and perfect as if no one had passed. This is not magic in the spectacular sense, no flash of light or dramatic transformation. It is simply how things are. The snow does not record his passage because his passage is not an intrusion, but a kind of belonging, so complete that the snow sees no reason to acknowledge it. He begins his walk at the northernmost tower, where the kingdom's border meets the wild forest beyond. This tower is slightly taller than the others, its top accessible only by a narrow spiral staircase worn smooth by centuries of climbing feet. But he does not climb tonight. Instead, he circles the tower's base, checking the perimeter with eyes that miss nothing. A shutter hangs slightly loose on a third-floor window, moving almost imperceptibly in air currents too faint to be called wind. He notes this. Near the tower's entrance, a drift of snow has accumulated in a way that will make the door difficult to open come morning. He notes this too. And at the tower's eastern side, where shadow pools deepest, a small crack has formed in the mortar between stones, barely wider than a thread but present nonetheless, a place where water might seep and freeze and eventually cause damage if left unattended. He crouches, examining this crack with attention that borders on reverence, then continues on. His route follows the kingdom's perimeter, moving from tower to tower in a pattern he has repeated countless times. Between towers, the way passes through forest, across open fields, along the lake's edge. Each location presents its own character, its own specific quality of darkness and cold and silence. In the forest, the quiet becomes almost oppressive in its completeness. Here, even the aurora's light struggles to penetrate the canopy of snow-laden branches, and the darkness under the trees takes on weight and substance. Small animals sleep in burrows beneath the snow, their body heat creating tiny air pockets where they curl safe from the killing cold. He senses, rather than sees, these sleeping creatures, aware of them in the way one is aware of a held breath. They are safe, for now. He moves on. At one point, he pauses beside a tree that leans dangerously, its root system partially exposed by erosion. In spring, when the snow melts and water flows, this tree will fall, and in falling it will block a path, cause a minor inconvenience. But spring is months away, and he has time. He makes a mental note of the tree's location, files it away with hundreds of other small observations that form the ongoing catalog of the kingdom's state. Emerging from the forest, he crosses a field where the snow lies particularly deep and untouched. Here, the aurora overhead reflects off the snow's surface, creating a ghostly landscape of blue-green illumination. The field seems to glow from within, and for a moment, walking across it feels like wading through light made solid. His cloak trails behind him, but even in this perfect snow, it leaves no mark of passage. At the field's far edge, a fence marks the boundary of a farm. The fence is well maintained, its posts driven deep and its rails sound. But one post has begun to lean, pushed gradually by accumulated snow and the slow movement of frozen ground. It will need addressing before the spring thaw makes the ground too soft for proper repairs. He examines the post, testing its stability with a gentle pressure that disturbs nothing. Then he continues on. The next section of his route takes him along the frozen lake's shore. Here, where ice meets land, the boundary is marked by pressure ridges and formations where expanding ice has pushed against immovable earth. These formations create small caves and overhangs, places where snow accumulates in wind-sculpted shapes of strange beauty. He walks among them, his presence causing no disturbance, his breath visible only briefly before the cold absorbs it. Midway along the lake's western shore, he pauses at a dock that extends out onto the ice. The dock's wooden planks are thick with frost, and icicles hang from the underside in a dense forest of frozen spikes. In summer, children jump from this dock into water so cold it takes the breath away even on hot days. In winter, it serves only as a landmark, a reminder that other seasons exist and will return. He checks the dock's support posts, finds them solid, moves on. The aurora above shifts colors, from green to violet to a rare red that speaks of particularly intense solar activity. This red appears when particles react with oxygen at higher altitudes, generally above 150 miles, where the oxygen is less concentrated and excited at a higher frequency than the denser oxygen lower down. The light washes over the kingdom in waves, making shadows dance and shift in ways that might be disturbing if anyone were awake to see them. But the kingdom sleeps, and the guardian walks alone. As he continues his circuit, small details accumulate. A lantern in the town square has burned low and will need oil tomorrow. A child's toy lies abandoned in the snow beside a house, a wooden horse on runners that will warp and split if left through winter. He retrieves this toy, carries it to the house's doorstep where it will be found in the morning. A gate stands ajar at a property's edge, swinging slightly on hinges that have begun to freeze. He closes it gently, the sound of its latch catching barely audible in the vast quiet. These actions seem small, perhaps meaningless in the broader scope of kingdom and night and winter's endless progression. But they are not meaningless. They are everything. They are the difference between comfort and discomfort, between safety and risk, between a kingdom that endures and one that slowly, imperceptibly begins to fail. He is not a ruler. He wears no crown, commands no army, issues no proclamations. He does not appear at festivals or ceremonies. Most people in the kingdom believe him to be nothing more than a story. A folk tale parents tell children about a guardian who watches over the frozen land. And yet the proof of his existence accumulates in these small acts, in shutters that somehow get repaired overnight, in paths that remain clear even after the heaviest snows, in dangers that never quite materialize because someone, something, intervenes. The walk continues through the depths of night, that period between midnight and dawn when time seems to expand and become elastic. Minutes stretch into feeling like hours, yet hours somehow pass in what feels like moments. The aurora continues its slow dance overhead, and auroras display dynamic patterns of radiant light that appear as curtains, rays, spirals, or dynamic flickers, each formation unique to this particular night, this specific configuration of solar wind and magnetic field and atmospheric gases. He reaches the southernmost part of the kingdom where the lake extends into marshlands that in warmer seasons host countless birds, but in winter lie frozen and silent. The ice here is thinner, marked with darker patches where springs bubble up from below, keeping the water from fully freezing. These weak spots pose dangers, and he notes their locations, comparing them to memories of previous winters, tracking how they shift and change year by year. Near one such weak spot, he discovers something unexpected: tracks. Not his own, for he leaves none, but the tracks of someone else. Someone who ventured out onto the ice hours ago, probably at sunset, walking toward the center of the lake. The tracks lead away from shore in a straight line, purposeful and even, but they do not return. He follows these tracks, moving faster now, but still without sound, still without leaving marks of his own. The ice creaks beneath him in places, singing its high-pitched song of stress and compression, but it holds. It has held for months and will hold for months more. But ice is treacherous in its constancy, looking solid even when weakness lurks beneath. The tracks lead him to the lake's center, where the ice is clearest and the depth below most profound. Here, the stars above and their reflections below create perfect symmetry, an infinity of light that can make a person feel lost in space. And here, he finds what he sought, a figure sitting on the ice, back straight, legs crossed, hands resting on knees. Not frozen, not in danger, simply sitting, staring up at the aurora. He approaches slowly, though she must hear him now, must sense his presence. When he is a few feet away, she speaks without turning. "I couldn't sleep," she says. Her voice is young, perhaps 16 or 17, and carries the particular quality of exhaustion that goes beyond physical tiredness. "I tried, but I kept thinking about everything that's wrong, everything that's hard. So I came here." He says nothing, only waits. This is what he does. He waits, he watches, he listens. And in the listening, people sometimes find what they need. "Do you ever wonder," she continues, still not looking at him, "why we bother? Everything just keeps going, day after day, winter after winter. What's the point of all of it?" The question hangs in the air like breath made visible, and for a long moment there is only the faint creak of ice and the whisper of aurora light shifting colors overhead. When he finally speaks, his voice is low and carries the texture of years beyond counting. "The snow falls," he says simply. "The ice forms. The seasons turn. Not because they have a point, but because they are. And in their being, they create the conditions for other things to be, for you to be." She turns now, looking at him directly, and in the aurora's light, he can see her face is wet with tears that have frozen into tiny crystals on her cheeks. "But I'm so tired," she whispers. "I'm tired of being strong, tired of keeping going, tired of pretending everything is fine." "Then don't pretend," he says. "Be tired, be uncertain, be afraid. These things are not failures. They are simply what you are in this moment." "But someone has to be strong," she protests. "My family, they depend on me. If I'm not strong—" "There is a difference," he interrupts gently, "between being strong and standing watch. You do not have to be unmoved to be present. You do not have to be unafraid to be dependable. I am afraid every night." This seems to surprise her. "You are?" "Every night," he confirms. "Afraid I will miss something important. Afraid my attention will waver. Afraid that one night something will slip past me and harm will come to those I watch over. The fear does not prevent me from walking. It informs my walking. It makes me careful." She absorbs this, looking back up at the aurora, which has shifted now to primarily green with occasional streaks of violet threading through. The most common color is green, which is produced when oxygen is excited by electrons around 60 miles above Earth's surface. The light moves across her face like water, and some of the tension in her shoulders eases slightly. "Will you walk with me back to shore?" he asks. "It's time for you to sleep, and this ice is no place for sleeping." She nods, rises stiffly from her sitting position, joints protesting the cold and stillness. Together they walk back toward the lights of the kingdom. her footprints appearing in the snow while his do not. They do not speak again until they reach the shore. "Thank you," she says simply. He inclines his head slightly. "Sleep well. Tomorrow will be different from today, and the day after different still. This is both the burden and the gift of time." She watches him for a moment longer, then turns and walks toward the town, toward home and warmth, and, hopefully, rest. He watches until she is safely inside, until the door closes and light from within the house confirms her presence. Only then does he continue his route. The encounter has taken perhaps 15 minutes, but in that time something has shifted. Not dramatically, not in ways that anyone else might notice, but shifted nonetheless. One person in the kingdom will sleep easier tonight, will wake tomorrow with slightly more capacity to face whatever comes. This is what protection looks like. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but small interventions, quiet presences, the knowledge that someone stands watch while others rest. He continues on, his circuit taking him past more farms, through more forest, along more stretches of empty snow. The night deepens toward its furthest point, that moment just before dawn when darkness reaches its fullest expression and seems poised to last forever. This is the moment winter itself seems most alive, most present, when cold penetrates deepest and silence becomes most complete. At the kingdom's highest watchtower, he pauses. This tower was the first built centuries ago, and its stones carry a weight of history the others lack. The builders carved symbols into these stones, protective sigils and prayers in a language few remember. He traces one such symbol with his fingers, feeling the grooves worn by time and weather, and for a moment allows himself something like weariness. There is a door at the tower's base, and he opens it, steps inside. The interior is dark and cold, unused for decades. Stairs spiral upward, and he climbs them now, his footfalls making no sound even on stone. The stairs are worn smooth in their centers where countless feet have passed, creating depressions like scooped-out spoons. He climbs past arrow slits that look out onto different aspects of the kingdom. Climbs past empty rooms where guards once slept. Climbs until he reaches the tower's top. Here, a circular platform opens to the sky. Crenellations ring the edge, and between them, the view extends in all directions, encompassing the entire kingdom and the wilderness beyond. From this height, the town appears as a small cluster of lights, delicate and precious against the vast darkness. The frozen lake spreads like hammered silver, and the forests look like dark clouds settled onto earth. The mountains rise in the distance, their peaks lost in clouds that hold their own faint luminescence. Above, the aurora has reached its peak intensity, filling half the sky with ribbons and curtains of light. The colors shift through their spectrum: green, violet, and red, with purple and pink appearing at the lower edges or as mixtures. The light is strong enough now to cast distinct shadows, to paint the snow below in shades of emerald and amethyst. He stands at the platform's edge and allows himself a rare moment of stillness. Not the stillness of waiting or watching, but the stillness of simply being. For a moment, he is not the guardian, but simply a person, alone at the top of a tower, looking out at winter's beauty. The memory comes unbidden, as it always does when he stands here. A different winter, centuries or perhaps millennia ago, when he was not the watcher but the watched over. When he was young and afraid and certain that the darkness would consume everything. When someone else stood watch. someone whose name he can no longer remember but whose presence he can never forget. That person saved him, though not in any dramatic fashion. They did not slay a monster or defeat an army. They simply stayed awake when he could not, simply watched when his eyes closed, simply stood guard while he rested. And in the morning, when he woke, the world was still there, still whole, still safe. Because someone had chosen to remain vigilant through the darkness. He does not know what became of that guardian. Perhaps they are still watching somewhere, or perhaps they finally allowed themselves to rest, their duty passed to others. What he knows is this: the act of watching, of standing guard, of remaining present through the long darkness is something that can be transferred from person to person, generation to generation, like a flame passed from candle to candle until the original source is forgotten but the light remains. This is why he walks. Not because he is special or chosen or blessed with powers beyond normal people. He walks because someone once walked for him, and in that walking created the conditions for him to become someone who could walk for others. It is a debt that can never be repaid to its original source, so it is paid forward, endlessly, into a future he will never see. The aurora begins to fade now, its colors dimming as the first hints of dawn approach. In the east, the sky lightens almost imperceptibly, black becoming dark blue, becoming the faintest suggestion of gray. The stars that seemed so permanent and eternal now begin to wink out, overpowered by the sun's approaching light. He descends from the tower, moving back down the worn stairs, back through the empty rooms and past the arrow slits. He emerges at the base as the first true light of dawn breaks over the mountains, and the kingdom transforms once again. What was mysterious and shadowed in darkness becomes ordinary in daylight. The snow is simply snow, white and clean and covering everything. The forests are trees. The lake is frozen water. The town is buildings where people live and work and love and argue and dream. Already, smoke begins to rise from chimneys in thicker streams as fires are stoked. A dog barks somewhere, greeting the day. A door opens and someone emerges to fetch wood for their hearth, their breath forming clouds in the cold morning air. The kingdom wakes, and in waking, it has no idea that it was watched over through the night. This is as it should be. The best protection is the kind that goes unnoticed, that allows people to sleep soundly not because they are aware of the guardian, but because they are unaware of the threats he keeps at bay. The loose shutter will be noticed and repaired. The leaning fence post will be addressed. The toy on the doorstep will be retrieved and cherished. And no one will wonder how these things came to their attention, because the world is full of small coincidences and fortunate circumstances. As the sun rises fully, he makes his way to a small structure at the edge of town, barely more than a shed, tucked between two larger buildings in a way that makes it almost invisible. This is his place, his rest. Inside, there is a cot, a small stove, a chair, a table. Nothing more. He does not need more. He removes his cloak, his armor, his boots. He builds a small fire in the stove, enough to take the edge off the cold, but not so much as to make the room warm. He lies down on the cot and closes his eyes, and within moments, he sleeps. He sleeps the sleep of someone who has done what needed doing, who has walked the paths that needed walking, who has watched over those who needed watching. He sleeps, and in his sleep, he dreams of spring, of snow melting and water running free, of ice breaking apart with sounds like thunder, of trees budding with new green leaves, of birds returning from southern migrations. He dreams of a day when his walking will no longer be necessary, when the kingdom will need no guardian because it will have learned to guard itself, each person watching over the others, each act of care forming part of a larger network of protection. But for now, the kingdom still needs him. And so, when evening comes again, when the light fades and the cold deepens and the people retire to their homes and their beds, he will wake. He will don his cloak and his armor and his boots, and he will walk. The snow will fall, as it always does, in that particular silence that absorbs all sound. Snow can absorb anywhere from 50 to 90% of sound, depending on the severity of the snowfall and the texture of the snow, creating a hush that blankets the kingdom like an additional layer of protection. The aurora will dance overhead if conditions are right, painting the sky in colors that speak to something beyond the merely visible. The ice on the lake will sing its strange songs of stress and settling. The forests will stand in their patient vigil. The mountains will hold the valley in their ancient embrace. And through it all, he will walk. Not because he seeks recognition or reward. Not because he believes himself a hero or a savior. Simply because someone must, and he has chosen to be that someone. He has chosen the path of the watcher, the guardian, the silent presence that asks nothing except the privilege of keeping watch. This is his purpose, refined over countless nights to its essential truth: to be present in the darkness so that others may rest in peace, to remain awake so that others may sleep soundly, to stand guard at the threshold between safety and danger, not preventing the darkness from existing, but preventing it from overwhelming those who shelter in the light. The kingdom endures because someone chooses to walk its perimeter each night. The snow falls because this is what snow does. The winter continues because this is winter's nature. And in the space between these certainties, in the quiet hours between darkness and dawn, protection takes the form of a solitary figure moving through silence, leaving no trace, asking for nothing, giving everything. This is the story of the frozen kingdom, and the guardian who watches over it. A story without dramatic climaxes or violent confrontations, without heroic speeches or spectacular rescues. A story about the quiet work of care, the patient labor of protection, the profound significance of simply being present when presence is needed most. The kingdom sleeps, the guardian walks, and in this simple exchange, both are sustained. The watched over can rest because someone watches. The watcher can continue because someone needs watching. It is a balance as old as communities themselves, as essential as shelter and food and warmth. And so the night passes, as all nights do, giving way to dawn. And with dawn comes another day, with all its small challenges and quiet triumphs. The kingdom will wake, will go about its business, will live and work and love. And when night falls again, when exhaustion claims the last person standing, when even the dogs have curled up to sleep and the fires have burned to coals, he will be there. Always there, walking the perimeter, checking the towers, noting the small repairs needed, the minor dangers to address, the countless tiny interventions that keep a kingdom safe. He will be there in the darkness, a silent guardian, asking nothing, giving everything, protecting those who sleep with a dedication that borders on the sacred. Because someone must watch, someone must remain awake, someone must stand guard in the longest nights, and he has chosen to be that someone, not because he is special, but because he understands a fundamental truth. Protection is not about grand gestures, but about showing up, night after night, regardless of whether anyone notices or appreciates it. The frozen kingdom endures. The guardian walks. And somewhere between these two facts lies something profound about duty, about care, about the quiet ways we sustain each other through darkness toward dawn. The snow continues to fall, soft as thought, silent as sleep, covering the kingdom in its endless white blanket. And beneath that blanket, wrapped in warmth and peace, the kingdom rests, dreaming dreams of spring while winter holds them safe. If you found peace in this story tonight, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Pillow Loom for more sleep-inducing journeys. Your support helps us continue creating these restful escapes. Until tomorrow night, sleep well, and know that even in your deepest rest, you are held and protected by forces seen and unseen. Good night.